I wasn't even watching the news for the news. It was just background noise, something to fill the silence while I reheated leftovers from the night before. The microwave beeped, and I pulled out the container, steam fogging up my glasses. I was halfway to the couch when the newscaster's voice cut through the room, sharp and urgent. Breaking tonight, local firefighters respond to an electrical fire at Mason Avenue Park. Mason Avenue. That was 2 blocks from my office. I turned toward the screen just as the footage rolled. Flames licking the sky, the orange glow casting shadows against the trees. A crowd had gathered behind the fire trucks, neighbors, joggers, probably curious kids skipping homework. And then I saw them. Her. And him. Clear as day. Like someone pressed pause on my life and etched that frame into my brain. She was hugging him. My wife. With her arms around my best friend. Her head tucked into his chest like it was the safest place in the world. He stroked her back. He smiled. And she laughed, like she hadn't laughed in months. And I just stood there, holding a bowl of lukewarm lasagna, watching my marriage burn in the background of a goddamn news report. I didn't say a word. I didn't throw the bowl or scream or call her name. I just sat down and rewound the footage. Rewatched it. 3 times. By the 4th time, I noticed the little details. How her hand slipped into his. How they leaned into each other like they didn't have to hide anymore. Like the world could see them, and they didn't care. I turned off the TV. I didn't eat. I didn't move for a long while. My thoughts were stuck, looping between denial and disbelief. I kept thinking, maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe there's some explanation. Maybe. But deep down, I knew. You don't hold a friend like that. You don't laugh into his shirt while your husband's waiting at home, thinking everything is fine. Her name is Julia. We've been married for 8 years. And up until that moment, I thought we were okay. Not perfect, nobody's perfect, but okay. We met in college. She was the girl who drank black coffee and quoted Maya Angelou in casual conversation. I was the guy who always forgot his keys but somehow remembered her favorite tea on the coldest days. My best friend. His name's Mike. We grew up on the same street. Played backyard football until our legs gave out. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at mine. His marriage didn't last. I should have paid more attention to why. The night wore on, and Julia came home like nothing happened. Tossed her purse on the kitchen counter, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Smells like lasagna. You're spoiling me." I stared at her, waiting for something. A crack in her voice. A hint of guilt. But she was smooth. Practiced. Like she'd done this before. "How was your day?" she asked, slipping off her shoes. I opened my mouth. I almost said it. Almost asked why you were holding Mike like he was your husband. But instead, I just nodded. "Fine," I said. Quiet. She smiled and walked past me to the bathroom. That night, she curled into me like always. Her body warm. Her breathing slow and even. I stared at the ceiling for hours, counting every second between her breaths, wondering how many nights she had come home from him to lie beside me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. But I didn't confront her either. No, I was going to do something different. I was going to be patient. Watchful. Careful. Because if she was going to lie to me in my own home, if he was going to betray the brotherhood we built over 20 years, then I'd make sure they both paid the price. Not with fists. Not with shouting. But with loss. They were going to lose everything. And they wouldn't even see it coming. I started waking up earlier. Earlier than her. Earlier than I needed to. I'd sit at the dining room table in the half-dark, just listening. Listening to the creaks in the floorboards upstairs, the faint hum of her shower, the way she cleared her throat while brushing her teeth. I memorized everything. Her routine. Her tells. Her silences. It's funny how much you miss when you trust someone. You stop looking. You assume they're on your side because you've built a life together. You give them your passwords, your secrets, your past, and you believe that makes you safe. It doesn't. The first thing I did was stop using our joint credit card. I opened a new account in my name only, at a different bank. One she'd never think to check. I transferred small amounts at first, hundreds here, 1,000 there, from my savings, my investment account, even a refund check she thought never arrived. It added up. Quietly. I needed money to disappear the way I was planning to disappear. Meanwhile, I pretended nothing had changed. I kissed her goodbye every morning. Brought home takeout on Fridays. Asked about her day like I cared what meetings she had or how annoying Susan from HR was being again. I even offered to do the laundry more often, because sometimes, secrets hide in the pockets. One night, I found a crumpled receipt from a wine bar downtown. Not somewhere we usually went. It was dated 2 days earlier. The time: 7:42 p.m. She'd told me she was working late. I folded it neatly and slipped it into a folder I'd started keeping under a false drawer in the garage. I labeled the folder, Quiet Exit. A couple of days later, I installed a keylogger on the laptop we shared. It took about 10 minutes, and she never noticed. Why would she? I was still the man who made her tea on Sundays and scratched her back without being asked. By the end of the week, I had her passwords. All of them. Email. Instagram. A private messaging app one didn't even know she used. That's where I found the photos. They weren't graphic, not by internet standards, but they didn't need to be. A blurry selfie at the lake. His arm around her shoulder. Her face tucked into his neck. Another one, zoomed in from across a restaurant table. Candles. Wine glasses. Her smiling like she used to with me. Like she should have been with me. There were no captions. Just timestamps and emojis. A red heart here. A lock symbol there. One message from him that read: "Wish we could just be out in the open already. I'm tired of hiding." She responded: "Soon. Just a little longer. He still trusts me." That last line, that's the one that cracked something in me. He still trusts me. I shut the laptop. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. It was colder than that. A deeper kind of betrayal, like someone stabbed me in the back and twisted the blade so slowly I didn't even bleed until now. I went outside and sat in the car for an hour, just thinking. I could have confronted her right then. Could have thrown the laptop at the wall or called Mike and told him I knew everything. I could have screamed. Made a scene. Torn it all down in one chaotic blaze. But no. That's what they expected me to do. That's what men like me do in stories like this. Lose control. Become the villain in someone else's version of events. I wasn't going to give them that. I wasn't going to give them anything. Instead, I made a plan. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I needed. I met with a divorce attorney without telling anyone. A woman named Linda Marsh, sharp eyes, no nonsense, expensive watch. I told her the truth, I wanted out. Quietly. Efficiently. And I wanted to walk away clean, with everything I was owed. I showed her the photos. The messages. The receipts. I laid it all out without flinching. She leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "You've got her," she said. "Especially if she doesn't see this coming." "Oh, she won't," I said. "She thinks I'm still brushing her hair off her shoulder because I love her." Linda didn't smile. She didn't need to. She just nodded once, slowly. "Then let's get to work." The second step was documenting every financial move. Julia wasn't good with money. She left the bills to me, the taxes, the budgeting. She had access, but she rarely looked. She trusted me. That's what made this so easy. I began retitling anything I could into my name alone. The car, done. My business account, separated. The rental property we co-owned with Mike. I had my lawyer begin drafting paperwork to sell my share to a silent partner, someone I trusted more than family. I made backup copies of everything. Kept them in a fireproof lockbox. One in the garage. One in a storage unit under a name she wouldn't recognize. And all the while, I played the part of the devoted husband. I took her to brunch on Sundays. Bought her flowers for no reason. She even told her sister on the phone, "I feel like we're in a good place again. He's been so sweet lately." I was sweet because I wanted her calm, complacent, vulnerable. I was sweet because I needed just a little more time. And then one day, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I usually ignored it. But this time, I picked it up. Mike's name flashed across the screen. Still on for tonight. She never locked her phone. Why would she? I opened the text thread and scrolled. I didn't want to. But I did. They had a hotel room. 9 p.m. downtown. Room 614. And just like that, I had my final piece. I didn't go to the hotel that night. No. That would have been too easy. Too theatrical. What was I supposed to do? Storm in like some cliché daytime soap husband? Catch them tangled in sheets and scream while security dragged me out? No. That would have made me the fool. It would have made me emotional, unhinged. And right now, I needed to be surgical. Instead, I called in a favor. You see, I used to do freelance IT consulting back in the day. That meant, once upon a time, I helped install the security system in that exact hotel. Not the cameras themselves, that was outsourced, but the internal server that stored footage before it was sent to the cloud. I knew the guy who managed those files. Ray. Quiet dude. 2 kids. Owed me more than one. So I called Ray. Told him I was working on a privacy breach case and needed access to the hallway footage for room 614, timestamped 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. He didn't ask many questions. 2 hours later, he sent me a link to a private folder. The file wasn't long. Just a few minutes of grainy hallway footage. But it was enough. I watched it in silence, Julia entering first, wearing the black coat I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Mike followed a few minutes later, looking around like a nervous teenager sneaking out past curfew. They didn't kiss in the hallway. They were smarter than that. But they didn't need to. The camera caught them holding hands for just 1 second. That's all it took. Frame. Pause. Screenshot. I printed it out. Black and white. No emotion, no dramatics. Just proof. It went straight into my quiet exit folder. The next day, I scheduled a meeting with Linda, my lawyer. We were close now, closer than Julia could ever imagine. Linda scanned the new footage without even blinking. This locks it, she said. Adultery in the state. This puts us in a much better position, financially, legally, emotionally, the whole package. Especially if we present it first. What if she tries to file first? I asked. She won't, Linda said, calm and cool. Women like her don't expect consequences. They expect tears. Regret. Some long conversation in a kitchen about how they didn't mean to hurt anyone. They don't see it coming until the floor disappears under them. That night, Julia came home late again. Said traffic was awful. Said she had to stop for gas. Said she ran into a friend she hadn't seen in forever. Lies, all of them, like faded wallpaper trying to cover a cracked wall. I smiled and made her a cup of tea. We sat on the couch like a normal couple. She rested her head on my shoulder and scrolled through her phone while I stared blankly at the TV screen. I don't even remember what was on. All I remember is the way she breathed, calm, even, guiltless. I wanted to scream. Not out of rage, but disbelief. How do people lie like that? So easily. So casually. How does someone sit in the home you built together and pretend they're not pulling it down, brick by brick? But I stayed quiet. Because tomorrow was the day. That morning, I got up earlier than usual. Got dressed in a clean button-up. No tie. Casual, but sharp. I looked like a man who had finally slept through the night. Julia was still asleep when I left. I stopped by the storage unit, picked up the second box of documents, and headed straight to Linda's office. By noon, the paperwork was filed. I was officially divorcing my wife. But here's the thing. I didn't serve her yet. No. That part. I wanted to do myself. Not out of cruelty. Out of precision. The next evening, I came home like normal. Set my keys on the counter. Asked her what she wanted for dinner. She said Thai. I ordered from her favorite place and made small talk while we waited for the delivery guy. Midway through dinner, I looked her in the eyes. Do you love me? I asked. She blinked, caught off guard. What? It's a simple question, I said. Do you still love me? She put her fork down. Of course I do. Why would you even ask that? I nodded slowly. I just wanted to hear you say it. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. I know we've had our ups and downs, but I'm really happy lately. You've been different. In a good way. I smiled. The next morning, I set the trap. She worked from home on Wednesdays, so I left a manila envelope on her desk before heading out. Inside were the divorce papers, the photos, the screenshot from the hotel, and a simple note. I know everything. Please sign and send this to my lawyer. Don't contact me. My silence has been your luxury. It ends now. Then I left. I didn't go to work. I didn't even go home. I drove to a small cabin 3 hours out, one I'd been renting under a different name for months. Just in case. A temporary bunker while everything played out. And then I waited. At first, nothing. No texts. No calls. Then came the storm. Around 11:43 a.m., she started blowing up my phone. Messages. Missed calls. Voicemails that ranged from weepy to furious. She begged. She screamed. She asked me to please just talk. Said we could work it out. Said I was misunderstanding everything. But she never once denied it. Not once. By 5 p.m., she sent one last text. I made a mistake. But this doesn't have to be ugly. Please don't ruin everything. Ruin everything? No, Julia. You did that all by yourself. I stayed at the cabin for 3 days. In that time, Linda handled the legal motions, froze the joint accounts, and arranged for a formal separation of property. We served a restraining clause to block her from touching anything that wasn't strictly hers. I didn't go home again. Not really. Just long enough to pack the rest of my things and have a locksmith change the office lock she used to sneak into for emails. I wasn't worried she'd try to take anything. She was too stunned, too busy reacting. And Mike? He sent me one text. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I'm sorry, man. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I deleted it. I didn't reply. Because here's what they don't tell you about betrayal: it doesn't break you in half. It dissolves you, piece by piece, until you become someone else entirely. Someone sharper. Smarter. Stronger. And I wasn't finished yet. The silence after I sent those papers was louder than any argument we could have had. When Julia stopped calling, I thought that would bring me peace. But peace isn't quiet. Peace is closure. And I was nowhere near it. On the 4th day at the cabin, I woke up to a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. Only a handful of people knew where I was, and none of them were Julia. Still, I reached for the drawer next to my bed. Not for anything dangerous, just the envelope with all the backups, documents, emails, footage, printed and ready. When I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Linda. She held 2 coffees and that look, part lawyer, part reluctant friend. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, I muttered, stepping aside. Come in. She sat on the edge of the couch, brushed some dog hair off her pants, leftovers from her golden retriever, Murphy. I wanted to talk in person. I've got updates, Anne, you need to hear them before things move forward. I nodded, sipping the coffee. Black, no sugar. Just how I liked it. She wants to negotiate, Linda said bluntly. I scoffed. Negotiate what? She cheated. She lied. She blew up our marriage. She's not denying that, Linda said carefully. But she's still entitled to counsel. And her lawyer sent over a peace proposal. I raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to mean something to me. Linda handed me a printed letter. The headline read, Mutual Agreement Proposal, Division of Assets and Future Conduct. It outlined that Julia would agree to the divorce, publicly take blame, whatever that meant, and in return, I wouldn't push for a full court process. She'd get to keep her car, a percentage of the house sale, and her personal savings. It was laughable. Future conduct? I asked. Linda pointed to the paragraph. Both parties agree not to discuss, publish, or disseminate personal events or documentation related to their marriage, infidelity, or private matters to any third party or public platform. I let out a bitter chuckle. She's afraid I'll go public. Linda nodded. She has every reason to be. I'm not interested in humiliating her, I said. But I'm also not interested in protecting her image. She's panicking, Linda said. We've frozen the joint accounts, filed for full separation of shared property, and she's been locked out of all our financials. I think she's realizing what life without you actually looks like. I sat down, coffee untouched. She never once said she regretted it. She never even told me the truth. I had to find out on TV. Linda gave me a soft look. Some people only regret getting caught. That night, I went home. Not to move back in, but to see the fallout for myself. The moment I stepped through the door, Julia came rushing down the hallway, her hair a mess, eyes puffy. For a split second, she looked like a stranger, just some woman caught in a crisis. I was scared you wouldn't come, she whispered. I stood still. I'm not here for you. I came for a few files in the upstairs office. Nothing more. She reached for my arm. Please. Just, hear me out. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. But I didn't lean in, either. She sighed, wringing her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. It never is, I replied. She nodded, eyes tearing up again. I made a mistake. A terrible, selfish mistake. But we've been distant for a long time. You barely looked at me anymore. You were always working, or tired, or somewhere else. I felt invisible. And instead of talking to me, I said quietly, you decided to erase me. Her face crumpled. I didn't plan it with Mike. It was one night, and then it became two, and then it was something else. But it wasn't love. It was convenient, I finished. You could confide in him without consequences. My best friend, the one who knew me, trusted by both of us. Perfect cover. She looked like I'd slapped her. I didn't do it to hurt you. No. You did it because you didn't care if it hurt me. Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. I'll walk away with nothing. If that's what it takes. I won't fight. That caught me off guard. She continued. You deserve everything, and I ruined it. But I'm asking you, don't make this uglier than it has to be. I should have felt triumphant. I should have celebrated that small win. But all I felt was numb. I nodded once. I'll consider it. But you'll sign everything my way. No media games. No second thoughts. She nodded. I can't be hated forever. I looked her in the eye. Then you shouldn't have given me a reason. I went upstairs, got my files, and left without another word. Weeks passed. Papers were signed. Lawyers communicated. She agreed to the terms, every last one. And I kept my silence. No exposé. No viral confession. No revenge post. Just silence. Until Mike broke it. One afternoon, I was at a small cafe, reviewing blueprints for a property I was investing in. A side project, something to keep my mind off the rest. Then I looked up. And there he was. Mike. Walking straight toward me like nothing ever happened. Can I sit? He asked. I nodded once. He looked thinner. Paler. Like guilt had aged him fast. I haven't heard from her in 2 weeks, he said. She blocked me. I said nothing. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, he continued. I need you to know I never wanted this to play out like that. You were my brother. I agreed. He exhaled. You're handling this better than anyone I know. She said you never raised your voice. Never retaliated. Just vanished. I stirred my coffee. Funny. That's exactly how she treated our marriage. Mike leaned forward. I've lost everything. My job, my friends, even my parents won't talk to me. My dad called me a disgrace. I looked at him, eyes calm. Good. Then maybe you'll learn something. His lip twitched. Do you want to hit me? No, I said. Because the moment I do that, I lose the power. He looked away. I stood, gathering my things. I'm not angry anymore, Mike. I'm just done. And I walked away. That night, I sat alone in the cabin again. Fire crackling. Wind outside. And for the first time, I felt something close to peace. But the story wasn't over. Because as it turns out, betrayal doesn't just end with papers. Sometimes, the aftermath is worse than the act itself. And Julia. She wasn't done unraveling. A month had passed since I walked away from Mike in that cafe. Since the papers had been signed. Since Julia disappeared from my phone, my inbox, and every trace of my daily life. I thought that would be the end. I wanted it to be. But the thing about endings is, they're rarely where you expect them. It was a Thursday morning when the package arrived. No sender, just my name, neatly written in that familiar cursive I hadn't seen since our wedding invitations. I held it in my hands for a long time before opening it. Something about it felt final. Like opening it would open something in me I had finally sealed shut. Inside was a letter. Just one page. No perfume. No dramatic confessions. Just a handwritten note that started with, "If you're reading this, it means I've finally learned how to shut up and listen." I sat down. My hands didn't shake, but something inside me did. You said I erased you. That I made you invisible. And I've thought about that line every day since you said it. I didn't cheat because you were gone, or cold, or boring. I cheated because I was weak. Because I liked feeling admired again. I liked being someone's secret. But it's only after losing you that I realized. I was never a secret to you. I was everything. And I spit on that. So I won't ask for another chance. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for one thing. Please don't forget who you were before me. The man who saw potential in people. The one who could build a home from a pile of bricks and nothing else. The man who gave love without keeping score. Don't let my failure rewrite your story. I'll be gone for a while. I need to disappear, not for drama, but for honesty. I need to learn how to live without hurting people. I'll always love you. But I'm finally ready to love you in silence. J. I read it twice. Then a third time. And still. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because I had already mourned her. Grieved the woman I thought I married. The letter didn't reopen a wound, it simply confirmed it had scarred. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Linda again. She sounded tense. You're going to want to sit down for this, she said. What now? I asked. Julia's lawyer contacted me. She's voluntarily relinquishing all remaining claims to the house. Says she doesn't want her name on anything that was once shared with you. That surprised me. She's walking away from real money. She is, Linda confirmed. Which brings me to the next point, she also asked us to forward her a notarized agreement confirming you won't pursue public charges of defamation or exposure of private behavior. In return, she wants nothing. No name, no money, no story. I sat back. So this is her disappearing act. Linda hesitated. There's something else, she said. Off the record. Go on. I got a personal call from her mother. Julia checked herself into a private rehab center outside Asheville. Not for addiction. for what they called compulsive behavior and boundary dissolution. It's a therapy program for people who sabotage relationships and can't form trust. I didn't speak for a long time. Rehab. Julia. That wasn't in her character. Or maybe it always was, and I just never looked hard enough. Her mom wanted to thank you, Linda added quietly. She said you finally gave her daughter the push no one else ever could. I didn't know how to process that. Was I supposed to feel proud? Vindicated? Instead, all I felt was tired. I never wanted her destroyed, I whispered. Just, accountable. Linda's voice softened. And now she is. More than most ever become. Weeks turned into months. I got the house officially in my name. Renovated it. Not out of revenge, out of necessity. The old memories had to be scrubbed out. Room by room. I sold the car we shared. Adopted a dog, German Shepherd mix, full of energy and loyalty. Named him Rusty. And I started dating again. Cautiously. Slowly. Nothing serious, not yet. But for the first time in years, I was honest about what I wanted, and what I wouldn't tolerate. One night, I was at a dinner with some friends, and they introduced me to a woman named Claire. She was a school counselor, divorced, no drama. Just calm. We talked for hours. About nothing and everything. At the end of the night, as we walked toward our cars, she asked softly, "Do you think people can truly change?" I looked up at the stars. "I think people can choose to change," I said. "But not everyone makes the choice." She smiled. Good answer. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't rush it. But something shifted. It wasn't Julia. It wasn't erasure or replacement. It was something new. Then, the final twist. I was back at the cabin one weekend, chopping wood in the back lot, when my neighbor, an older guy named Ed, walked up with a box in his hands. "This came for you," he said. "Dropped at my place by mistake. Has your name on it." I wiped my hands and took it. Inside was a small photo album. Nothing else. No note. No label. Just photos. Some old, wedding day, house renovations, birthday dinners. But some, newer. Unfamiliar. Julia in a group therapy circle. Julia in the mountains, meditating. Julia planting flowers outside what looked like a halfway house. She hadn't sent them for guilt. She hadn't sent them for closure. She had sent them because, for the first time, she wanted to be seen the way I had once seen her, without lies. I stared at the final photo for a long time. It was Julia, sitting under a tree with a journal in her lap. And the date on the back. June 11th. My birthday. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Because I realized something. This wasn't a story about betrayal anymore. It was a story about becoming. And sometimes, we have to be broken to see what's real. Even if it means watching someone you once loved walk away. Not into someone else's arms. But into a version of themselves they never could have found with you. I had nearly forgotten what peace felt like. Mornings were quiet again. Coffee tasted like coffee, not a bitter reminder of where I failed. Rusty greeted me at the door every day like I was a hero returning from war. I wasn't, of course, but sometimes, surviving heartbreak does feel like a war story you wear beneath your skin. Claire and I kept things simple. No labels. No pressure. Just companionship and clarity. She had this way of listening that didn't make me feel like a broken project to fix, but like someone worth knowing, even with the dents. And then, the knock came. It was a Sunday. Early fall. Leaves just starting to scatter across the yard. I was working on my truck, covered in grease, when I heard the doorbell. I wiped my hands on a rag and went to answer it. And there she was. Julia. Wearing a long coat, hair shorter than I remembered, no makeup, no jewelry. Just her. I blinked. For a second, my brain didn't know how to process it, like seeing a ghost you'd finally made peace with. "Hey," she said softly. I didn't respond at first. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid of what would come out if I opened my mouth. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Just for 5 minutes." "I promise." I nodded. She didn't come in. We sat on the porch, side by side, knees not quite touching. I could feel the weight of time between us. Like a canyon that had been dug word by word, betrayal by betrayal. She took a breath. "I know I said I wouldn't come back. And I meant it. I don't want anything. Not from you. Not anymore." "Then why are you here?" I asked. She looked down. There was something I needed to say, in person. Something I've practiced 100 times in my head. I waited. Julia turned her head toward me. "I'm sorry I broke you." There was no defense in her tone. No tears. No manipulation. Just raw honesty. "I used to think cheating was about passion," she continued. "Or boredom. Or revenge. But it's not. Not really. It's about fear. I was afraid you'd realize you deserved better. So I burned it all down before you could walk away." That hit deeper than I expected. Because some part of me had felt that. All those nights I tried to convince myself I wasn't enough, that somehow, I caused it. But hearing her admit it aloud. It was like someone took a crowbar to the last rusted lock on my chest. I exhaled. "You didn't break me," I said quietly. "You cracked the foundation. But I rebuilt it." She smiled sadly. "I can see that." We sat there in silence. Not awkward. Just full. And then she stood. "That's all," she said. "I just wanted you to hear it. From me. Not a letter. Not a lawyer." I looked up at her. "Are you okay?" I asked, surprising myself. "I'm getting there," she said. "One truth at a time." Then she turned and walked away. No tears. No begging. Just closure. Real closure. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of scotch. Not because I was drowning in pain. But because I was thinking. About how strange it is, the way healing works. You spend months clawing your way out of a fire, thinking the person who lit it will never change, and maybe they don't. But sometimes, you do. Enough to meet them again and not feel anger. Not want revenge. Just understanding. Rusty curled up at my feet, and for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't haunted anymore. The house didn't creak with echoes. The memories didn't stab. They just sat there. Archived. Filed. Quiet. A week later, Claire invited me to her friend's cabin for a group weekend. Normally I'd say no, too many people, too much forced interaction. But something inside me said yes. Maybe because I was tired of tiptoeing around the idea of moving forward. The cabin was tucked in the woods, filled with laughter, music, a fireplace that popped like a heartbeat. Claire introduced me to her friends, real people. Not polished, not performative. Just grounded. That first night, we played a game. Everyone had to say one truth they'd never said out loud. When it came to me, I hesitated. But then I said it. I once tried to ruin someone out of pain. But I stopped. Not for them, for myself. The room got quiet. Claire looked at me, eyes steady. Then she reached across the couch and squeezed my hand. No judgment. Just presence. And for the first time, I let someone hold that part of me without trying to fix it. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Julia. From Mike. I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't give it either. But I wanted to tell you. I never stayed with her. Not after you left. It wasn't what I thought it was. I lost two of the best people I ever knew. I'll carry that. I'm sorry. I folded the letter and put it away. Not in the trash. Not in a drawer. Just away. Because sometimes, letting go isn't about forgiving. It's about choosing not to carry what someone else dropped on your shoulders. A few months passed. Claire and I found our rhythm: slow mornings, laughter over burnt pancakes, shared playlists on long drives. One Sunday, we walked along the lake trail with Rusty darting ahead. She turned to me and asked, "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" I thought about it for a while. "No," I said. "I think things happen. And we get to decide what they mean." She nodded. "I like that better." I reached for her hand. And this time, I didn't feel like I was betraying a memory. I wasn't replacing anything. I was choosing something new. Something earned. Something honest. Because here's what I've learned. Revenge feels good for about 5 minutes. But peace lasts. And if you can walk through betrayal, humiliation, heartbreak, and come out not bitter, not broken, but better, then you've already won. Even if nobody claps for you. Even if no one sees it but your dog in the mirror. Sometimes, survival is the quietest kind of triumph. And I'll take that over applause any day. The thing about closure is, it doesn't come all at once. It doesn't knock politely and say, "Hey, I'm here now. You can breathe." Sometimes, it shows up in little things. Like not checking someone's social media for the first time in weeks. Like driving past your old house and feeling nothing. Like seeing a couple argue in a grocery store and realizing you don't miss the drama. Peace is so quiet, it's almost invisible. But once you feel it, you start protecting it like your life depends on it. Because maybe, in some ways, it does. It was a Thursday when the lawyer called. "Divorce is finalized," she said. "Judge signed the papers this morning." I stood in my kitchen, looking out the window, holding a coffee mug in both hands like it might float away. "Thanks," I said. She paused. "You okay?" "Yeah," I answered. "Actually, yeah." When I hung up, I didn't cheer. Didn't punch the air. I just stood there and let the silence wash over me. I was free. Not just legally, but emotionally. The last brick I'd been carrying finally fell away. And in that stillness, something unexpected bubbled up. Not anger. Not regret. Gratitude. Because as much pain as I went through, it led me here. To this moment. To this clarity. To myself. Later that week, I met up with Claire at the dog park. Rusty was chasing a frisbee like his life depended on it. Claire sat next to me on the bench, sipping iced tea. She always brought the good kind, the kind with mint and lemon. "You look lighter," she said, nudging me gently. "I feel lighter," I replied. She looked at me for a second, then asked, "What now?" That question used to scare me. What now? After betrayal, after heartbreak, after war. Now, it felt like an open road. "I think I want to build something," I said. "Not just for me. Something real. Something that lasts." Claire smiled. "You already are." I started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped men deal with emotional trauma. It was Claire's idea. I thought she was joking at first. "I'm no therapist," I said. "No," she replied, "but you are someone who made it out. That's more than most." Turns out, a lot of men don't talk about betrayal. They bottle it up. Joke about it. Drink it away. Date over it. I sat in those group circles with guys who'd been through their own versions of hell. One guy's wife left him for their pastor. Another was raising 2 kids solo while his ex traveled the world with her yoga instructor. And then there was a young guy, barely 25, whose fiancée ran off with his brother. The pain in his eyes was so fresh, you could practically smell it. But when I told my story, about the TV report, the hug, the quiet revenge plan, and the choice not to destroy her, something shifted in the room. They didn't clap. Didn't cry. They just leaned in. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the loudest. They're the ones that whisper, "You're not alone." Months passed. Life began to look ordinary again. I started teaching myself woodworking on the weekends. Built a coffee table. Then a bench. Then a bookshelf, just because I could. Claire moved in. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. No proposal, no ultimatum. Just one night, she said, "My lease is up," and I said, "Want to stay?" and she said, "Yeah." And that was that. Simple. Easy. Right. One Saturday, I got a message from Julia. Not a call. Just a short text. "Just wanted you to know I got a new job. Small firm. Quiet town. Hope you're okay." No need to reply. I stared at it for a moment. Then smiled. Not because I missed her. But because I didn't. And that, more than anything, told me I was finally healed. I didn't reply. Not out of malice. But because sometimes, silence is the kindest thing you can offer, to them and to yourself. Claire and I adopted another dog. Rusty needed a buddy, and we found a quiet little rescue named June. She was shy at first, but Rusty brought her out of her shell. Kind of like what Claire did for me. Funny how life mirrors itself when you pay attention. One evening, I stood in the backyard, watching the sun dip below the trees. Claire came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. I thought about how far I'd come, from that moment in the living room, staring at the TV screen, to now. Back then, I thought revenge was the only path to power. But it turns out, peace is the real power. Forgiveness, not for them, but for you, is the key to walking free. And choosing not to fight fire with fire. That's the bravest thing I've ever done. So if you're listening to this, maybe going through something similar, here's what I want you to know. You don't have to burn down your life to prove you were wronged. You don't have to win the breakup. You don't have to be louder, meaner, colder. Sometimes, the loudest message is quiet. It's getting up, making coffee, petting your dog, and doing the damn dishes. It's not checking their page. It's not calling them when you're lonely. It's choosing you. Every single day. Until choosing you becomes second nature. This isn't a story about revenge. Not really. It's a story about choice. About who you become when everything crumbles. About what you do after the betrayal, after the heartbreak, after the screaming stops. Do you stay bitter? Or do you build? I built. Not a castle. Not a wall. Just a home. A quiet, peaceful, love-filled home. With mismatched mugs and rescue dogs and someone who laughs at my bad jokes. And I wouldn't trade that for all the revenge in the world. Because I finally learned. The best revenge is no longer needing it.